Get over here!
Hey guys, I'm Chris with True Fun Entertainment, and if this is the first time you're watching my videos, welcome. I am currently porting Mortal Kombat to the Atari Jaguar. And in the last video, I announced the release of the pre-alpha version of the game. This was a copy of the game that went out to all of my Patreon supporters so they could download the game, put it on their game drive, and test it on real hardware. And the pre-alpha is still available if you want to join the Patreon. It's got these 7 original fighters, 4 of the stages, and a basic move set. So no specials, no finishers, but it's kind of a my way of thanking the supporters so that they can get their hands on the game now and start reporting bugs. But then also I wanted to go through kind of the release life cycle at least once. So I had gone through that and I had a feel for it. So it's gone well. The game is rough around the edges. I've gotten plenty of bug reports, but I've got everything cataloged and I'm working my way through them. So today I want to talk about the progress that's been made since that last video. Primarily I've been working on kind of turning it from a proof of concept to a game. So the first piece of that was building out a menu system. So in the pre-alpha, as soon as you boot up the game, it takes you right into the fighter select screen where player 1 and 2 can select their fighters and then hop into the fight. But, you know, for a real game, you need to have a menu system. So you can go into the options, select your play modes, and things like that. So I built out a main menu system as well as an attract mode. So in the arcade, if no one's playing, the arcade cycles through screens to kind of attract the player to come, you know, play the game. And I wanted to recreate that experience on the Jaguar as well. So we're going to take a look at kind of my take on the attract mode as well. Then we're going to get into, I finally tackled the first wave of special moves for the characters. And the first thing I wanted to tackle was their projectiles. So each fighter has some sort of projectile, whether that's Johnny Cage's green bolt, whether that's Kano's knife, Sub-Zero's ice, Scorpion's harpoon. All of these are projectiles that pretty much function the same way. And I was able to tackle it in such a way that I didn't expend any more resources on the Jaguar in terms of sprites on screen. I was able to kind of leverage what was already there and optimize things. And it turned out really well. So I was going to let you guys take a look at that and then take a look at how I tackle things from the graphics perspective and then in the code as well. And then finally, we're going to talk about what's next. So with this development, it's been a lot of iterating on things and building things out one way and then kind of refining it as I go. And once again, I have another uphill battle to climb to do things the right way. So we'll talk about that. But first, I want to hop in and take a look at the UI and attract mode. Let's take a look. Okay, so we've got our title screen loading in here, and now we can see this is the main menu. So I took inspiration from the arcade, obviously, with the scrolling profiles, and some of this I was able to leverage the Super Nintendo graphics as well. So it's kind of a nod to both, but making this unique to the Jaguar. We then have our leaderboard, and we have the full motion video intros for each of the fighters. And I really wanted to put this in the game because most of the console versions were missing that full motion video clip for each fighter. I think maybe the Sega CD had it, but I wanted to make sure it was intact for this. And you can see it cycles through Goro, through different ads, and now we're back to the leaderboard. We actually did a cool thing for the leaderboard on Patreon. I made a post, and everyone that replied to the post in order got their name added to the high score list. This is actually an outdated version that doesn't have everybody's name in there, but trust me, when the game comes out, everyone's name will be intact from the Patreon. But yeah, we have the full screen Goro graphics. Winners don't use drugs. This was a fun little nod to the arcade. I don't think Mortal Kombat had that actual ad in it, but if you were a kid playing arcade games in the 80s and 90s, you're pretty familiar with that screen. So that was a nice little nod to that. And we go through all of the character profiles and the full motion video intros. One other thing I'm going to do is I got this idea from the Mugen version of Mortal Kombat, where when you play single player mode, once you select your fighter, before you go into the rundown of fighters, it plays that intro with the fighter's profile, and I like that. I think it's a cool bookend to where you get kind of an intro of here's the fighter's story, here's why they're fighting in Mortal Kombat, then you fight through the tournament, and then you get the ending there at the end. So I'm going to redo that in this version of the game as well. So anyways, that's the attract mode and the main menu. So now I want to take a look at projectiles. Okay, so here's a quick look at all the projectiles for each fighter. The cool part is once I kind of built the framework for one projectile, I was able to leverage that for all of the fighters going forward. So the first one I tackled was actually Johnny Cage, but I found that Raiden was the one that actually already had the resources I needed. Okay, so here we have Raiden, and the box on the left illustrates Raiden in the fight, and the 3D perspective images is just to kind of illustrate layers. I wanted to give it a kind of a 3D look so that you can kind of understand how the layering works for the sprites. So in this case, for Raiden, we're using 3 sprites layered on top of each other. So the first sprite is the shadow. So the shadow is essentially the fighter sprite. It's a copy of that. Then I change the palette to all black, and then I use hardware scaling to actually scale it down to like 32 pixels, so it gives it that squished shadow look that it needs. Then there's the fighter themselves, right? And for most fighters, this is all we need for them on screen. We have the fighter themselves and their shadow. In the case of Raiden, I needed an extra sprite for his lightning. So the lightning, goes around Raiden as he does his idle stance, and the lightning is independent of that idle stance animation. So when it came to projectiles, I got to thinking, well, when Raiden shoots his lightning, the lightning animating around him goes away. So I could actually leverage that same sprite and just change it to the projectile and then animate that. And then I was like, well, then I can use that for everybody. So it was actually a cool way to save on resources, because with the Jaguar, you kind of have to manage your use of sprites on screen best you can. So, like we had with Raiden and his idle stance lightning, we just changed that to his projectile lightning, and then we can animate Raiden along with that sprite moving along towards the other fighter. And yeah, I was able to get all the projectiles working for all of the fighters, and I'm happy with how it turned out. Zero impact to performance, and everything looks pretty close to the arcade. The other thing I'll add that I did to kind of preserve resources and have minimal impact to the performance was I was able to use a limited color palette for the projectiles as well. So let me give you an example. So here is the sprite that actually holds all of the projectiles. So it's actually one image that has everyone's projectiles and the explosion or the ending animation that you would get for that projectile. And you can see everything is actually in black and white, and it's actually 16 colors as well. So by limiting the palette to 16 colors, I was able to minimize the size of that sprite on screen. So what I do, once I change the sprite for the given fighter to their projectile, I change the palette color as well. So for example, here we have the lightning, so that would be like shades of blue for Raiden's lightning. Up here, this is Kano's knife, which is a blue. and up here is Johnny Cage's green bolt. So all of those have their own palette, but all of this uses the same sprite, which means that it's super fast to load it, and it's using minimal resources in memory. Okay, so in the code, I wanted to show you guys kind of what I came up with for the projectiles and for their special moves going forward. So with Mortal Kombat, all of the fighters are exactly the same. Unlike Street Fighter, where the characters kind of move differently and have maybe a different move set, with Mortal Kombat, they are all the same. And the only difference is their special moves and their finishers. But in terms of how they move over the screen, how they interact with one another, they're exactly the same. So in doing that, I have one fighter struct or class. And basically, all of that logic for each fighter is the same. And that makes it to where I didn't have to code 7 fighters individually. I could code one and then have them have interchangeable special moves. And to do that, I came up with this concept of one, they have basically 3 special moves and then a finisher. So each special move, and you can kind of think of this maybe as like a placeholder. For each fighter has placeholders for 3 special moves. And each special move has a series of inputs that say, okay, if the inputs match these this pattern, then execute this special move. So in doing that, I have these arrays of inputs for each of the special moves. Special move 1, it has an array of inputs. Special move 2, the same, and special move 3. And if those inputs are matching, then it will execute a function pointer, which is held here. This do special move 1, 2, and 3. So what that means is I could decouple the base fighter functionality from the specifics of the special move for that fighter. So imagine I have one fighter class that gives me all of the basic functionality, like the ability to walk, duck, block, jump, all of those things. All the fighters get that out of the box. But if it's something specific to a certain fighter, such as Scorpion, if I do back high punch, I'll do the spear that he can throw. Okay, so here are the list of inputs for Scorpion's harpoon. I think I said earlier back high punch, but it is back low punch. And you can see here we store this actually backwards. So low punch is first, then we have back. And that's because I store this in a stack. So as the player is giving input, so they're pressing buttons on the controller, I store those inputs on a stack. So I can say, okay, they hit back, they hit forward, they hit low punch, they hit high punch, and so on. And that stack is then compared with these inputs. And if the inputs match, it will then go execute the function pointer for that given fighter's special move. And we can see here's all the signatures for those function pointers for each fighter and their projectile special move. And then the implementations obviously would be different for each fighter. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you guys is kind of my next undertaking in terms of code on this project. The way I currently built the fighters, and again, this is the first time I've ever built a fighting game. I've built puzzle games, I've made platform games, but this is my first fighting game. And I have learned a lot. And one of those things is how not to do things. And basically I built the fighters with a series of flags. So you can see all of these booleans, which a boolean is like a true false, so a flag, on or off. And we're basically saying all of these flags can be switched to say what state the fighter is in. Whether they're idle, are they walking, are they attacking, are they being damaged, ducking, high kicking, low punching, all that good stuff. This works, but it makes it very hard to debug, and it's very hard to maintain. because I have a lot of logic that says, okay, if you're idle and not blocking and not attacking, then you can do this. And it ends up to a lot of sticky logic that involves a lot of these flags to be turned on and off. And I have to maintain them all even when I add new flags. So I have to go, so for instance, if I need a new flag for, let's say, a jump kick, I then have to go modify all of the logic to make sure it's handling that flag appropriately. The way this should have been done is to simply make a state machine. So this isn't done yet, but this is kind of my idea for building out state machines for the fighters. And the idea is a fighter can only be in one state at a time. So that's we're changing all of those Boolean variables, those flags, into one variable that is the fighter's current state. So we can see their idle stance, they start there. From there they can move to a walk, to jump, they can duck. So once I make the logic such that it goes from state to state, it's going to make things a lot easier to maintain, and it's going to clean up the code a lot. Like I said, a lot of that ticky-tack logic of if you're walking and not blocking and not jumping, then do this. All of that goes away, and it's going to simplify things greatly. So I think this actually could improve performance. It's going to eliminate bugs, and it's going to make things easier to maintain going forward. And that's all the updates I have for today. I'm feeling good about the project. I've made a lot of good progress doing the projectiles and forcing me down that path of figuring out how I'm going to handle inputs and function pointers to handle these special moves. Getting that nailed down is huge progress. That now I can just kind of connect the dots and finish out the rest of the special moves and actually get some finishers in there as well. So that'll be fun. And like I said, to my Patreon supporters, thank you guys so much. You're keeping me motivated on this, reporting bugs, giving me ideas and feedback, and I'm keeping a log of all those things. And I'm going to stick to it. So till next time, we'll see you.